When you think of Atari in 2023, you might be thinking of the Gamestation or the Atari 50 collection that was released on home consoles. But what about this? How does this handheld arcade replica hold out against the alternatives? Well, let's take a look. What's going on? It's Pojer coming at you with another video. Alright, so it's the start of the new year, and we're just going to pick up where we left off. We're going to be talking about the Microplayer Pro by MyArcade. They also made the Gamestation, and I thought this would be an interesting video. So if you've seen a couple of my videos and you like what I do, hit that subscribe button right there. It's only a small thing, but it helps our channel grow. And then don't forget, we do have a Discord server. Just go to discord.pojer.net. I'll also put a link right in the description. Anyway, let's talk about this collection. Plug-and-plays are cheaper devices that have games built in that can be plugged into a TV. They usually have a theme, play 5 or 10 games, and are inexpensive devices. Jakks Pacific is one of the first companies to make these. Plug-and-plays were almost always aimed at price-oriented customers, so the build quality was cheap and the hardware capabilities were limited. But for the price, no one can complain. You usually see these consoles at places like Kohl's and Walgreens around Christmas time because they make great impulse buy items. MyArcade is one of the newer companies you see in these aisles. They're known for their handheld devices that come in Game Boy style consoles and mini arcade machines. Most of their well-known products are portable ones, but earlier in the year they made the Atari Gamestation. I made a video covering this console in great detail, definitely check it out, but to summarize, it's a unit that contains 139 Atari games. The Gamestation has a fantastic library of games and has every Atari console supported on here. Even obscure titles you wouldn't expect made it on here. However, the build quality of the controller is not great, the arcade titles do not support analog controls, and of the 200 games that they claim are on here, a third of them are throwaway games that do not belong on here. But all things considered, this is a viable way to play your favorite Atari games. Now let's talk about the Atari 50 collection. While not a plug-and-play device, it shares similarities with the Gamestation. Both are very strong collections that have a great library of games. Anyway, Atari 50 comes with 115 games with 12 that were just added earlier this month. This game is definitely well more polished than the Gamestation because of what it comes with. You have access to all the instruction manuals, you can see all the gameplay variations on screen, and there's more game settings you can mess around with. Both collections have a similar lineup of games, but there's a few titles that are only on the Gamestation and a few that are only on Atari 50. Overall, this is an excellent collection of games, and whether you go with this or the Gamestation, you're in for a good time. So why would I compare these with the Microplayer Pro? Shouldn't this be a different category? Well, actually, this unit contains 100 games, almost as much as the other two collections. Could it be that this is secretly another viable way to play classic 2600 games? Let's take a look. The unit itself looks really nice. It's a decent replica of what an actual arcade cabinet looks like. It's kinda light, and the buttons do feel a bit cheap, but I'm not surprised. This mini console is meant to have a cheaper price point, which means they're gonna use cheaper parts. MyArcade has to do this in order to keep the price down because they're aiming for price-oriented customers. To avoid confusion, there's 3 versions of the MyArcade Atari console. There's the one I have that contains 100 games, the Pocket version that also has 100 games, and the Nano version that has 75 games. Speaking of the amount of games, here's what's included. This is a very strong lineup of 2600 games, and it has nearly every title we expected, most of which are on the Gamestation and Atari 50. I see some paddle games, so I wonder how well they work with the arcade stick on this thing. I'm shocked to see more exclusive games that are not on the other two collections like Radar Lock, but unfortunately MyArcade pulled the same stunt that they did with the Gamestation. There's not actually 100 Atari games on here, there's only 77. The rest are throwaway games that have nothing to do with Atari. Not a big deal, you're still getting a great lineup of games, but some consumers might be misled into thinking they're getting 100 Atari games when they're not. When booting up the console, you'll notice the main screen looks a lot like the one on the Gamestation. The game list is much more simplistic, probably because of the lack of room on the screen. Unfortunately, this unit is a lot more bare bones. There's no option for save states, bezels, or scan lines. The screen quality is also not the best, almost reminds me of a front-lit Game Boy Advance SP. In order to talk about the emulation, I think it's best to go over a few games. Unfortunately, since there's no way to plug this into a TV, the only way I can record this is directly from the screen, so it's gonna look bad. Let's start off with something easy, Yar's Revenge. You play as an insect-like character and you can move and shoot in 8 different directions. This enemy is behind a barrier and you must shoot it down in order to destroy them with your Zorlon cannon. The emulation seems fine with this game, but my issue is with the arcade stick. It's very hard to make diagonal movements with this thing, which makes it a rough experience. Now for Crystal Castles. You play as Bentley Bear and you must collect all the crystals to advance to the next stage. It's impressive that Atari ported over an isometric game like this, but unfortunately, the poor diagonal controls on this console make this version very hard to play. Here's Real Sports Boxing. For 2600 standards, this is a very impressive boxing game. You can select from a roster of 4, and the graphics have a lot of detail. Even the audience has some animation. This game commonly doesn't work on emulators, so my arcade gets extra credit for this one. Now for Super Breakout. This is one of my favorite games on the console, and emulation-wise, it's fine. But unfortunately, the arcade stick doesn't support analog, and therefore it's not a pleasant experience. There's other paddle games on here like Warlords and Night Driver, but it makes me wonder why they even bothered when there's no support for analog controls. Let's try Quad Run. You play as a ship that must destroy the incoming enemies, but you must recapture your bullets after you shoot them. If you miss too many of your bullets, you get a game over. Unfortunately, the digitized voice is missing from the game. This is very sad to hear because the voice is arguably the best part of the entire game. In general, the sound is very low-pitched, almost like At Games made this thing. I also tried the game Off the Wall, and that happens to have sound issues as well. Here's Radar Lock. You almost never see this game on collections, so I thought I'd cover it. It's a flight simulation game where you gotta shoot the enemies and then refuel. The water has a rotation effect, which is very impressive on the 2600. In this version, however, when the rotation happens, you see some weird artifacts. Is that a water spout? What happened? Unfortunately, we can clearly see some emulation issues when playing this game. Now for Saboteur. It's a multi-level shooter where you have to destroy the rocket and defeat a boss at the end. It happens to be the last game that Howard Scott Warshaw made for Atari. I really like this title because there's 3 mini-games within a game and it keeps things fresh. I bring up this game, however, because for some reason my arcade gave us the prototype version. Look at the boss, it's clearly the one from the prototype build. This is what the boss is supposed to look like in the final version. Did they make a mistake? Did they throw the wrong ROM on here? To summarize, I did notice some sound and graphical issues here and there, but none of them are game changers. The controller is hard to use, especially when playing games that require diagonal movement, and it's unfortunate that there's no analog support. I'm not a big fan of the arcade stick, and I do wonder how the pocket version is. Might be the better option. Let's talk about the hardware again because there's a few aspects I wish this thing had. For one, it's not rechargeable. It takes 4 AA batteries, which are not included. There's a USB-C port, but the console doesn't come with a cord. They didn't give you anything. I also wish you could play this on a TV screen. Not a big deal because most people are going to buy this for the portability, but it would have been a nice feature. The price for this console is $40, which is much cheaper than the Gamestation, but you're also getting less games. To compare, Atari 50 comes with 115 games and that's only $30. So do I recommend this thing? For $40, you're getting a strong lineup of Atari 2600 games, just like the Gamestation and Atari 50. But there's slightly fewer games on the Microplayer Pro, so if you're strictly looking for the highest amount of games, you're going to want the Gamestation. If you're looking for a portable console though, then any of my arcade's mini consoles will do, although keep in mind that the Nano has fewer games. If you're looking for accuracy, then this definitely is not it. I noticed quite a few sound and graphical issues when playing, and you would have a better time with the GameStation or Atari 50. The Microplayer Pro is a cool handheld that has a great lineup of games, but the arcade stick is bad, the emulation is poor, the screen quality is mediocre, it's not rechargeable, and you can't play this on a TV. If you're looking for portability, this is definitely the way to go, but otherwise, there's better options out there. Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, hit that like button. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the subscribe button for more content. Both of these things really help the channel grow. If you have anything to share, feel free to leave a comment. I read every single comment on this channel, and I'm pretty good at replying back. Anyway, have a good one.